I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time. Here we are at the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio. And Cecile Richards, the chief head of Planned Parenthood, seems to be making a point that we would appreciate much. It is that every person has a right to live, as she says. She is the head of Planned Parenthood, and she says, here at Planned Parenthood, we firmly believe that every person has the right to live, work, and raise a family freely and without the threat of deportation or separation. The right to live, of course, is something that she does not really believe in, nor her organization, which is the largest destroyer of black people and of unborn people, men and women, probably in the world. She says DACA, the federal control on immigration and the federal grant of grace, if you will, to people born in this country to parents who are here illegally, she says, is an attack. The decision to end DACA, she says, is an attack that will leave 800,000 young people who have grown up in this country at risk of deportation, including members of the Planned Parenthood community. I love here the communitarian excess applied to Planned Parenthood. I'm infuriated, she says. I'm heartbroken, but I'm sure about one thing. Planned Parenthood stands with dreamers, the young people in this community who are the future of this country, unless, of course, they have been destroyed by her scalpel and suction cleaning apparatuses in Planned Parenthood community centers around the country. David Tulis here. Thank you for giving us a minute of your time. We are trying to get to a stack. My stack has ballooned over the course of the week, and I'm not being fair to things that I suspect you would want to hear about, at least just in passing. I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time. Wells Fargo Bank that we have here, presence here in Chattanooga, is linked to belief in the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has declared that a pro-family, pro-child organization is a hate group, and that would be the Ruth Institute. And what's happened is Wells Fargo has notified that Vanco, an online donation processor, notified Vanco that it will not be handling any transaction on behalf of the Ruth Institute. And that is because Ruth promotes hate, violence, harassment, or abuse. Now, this, of course, is far from the truth. But many of those accused by the SPLC of being hate groups are not at all that. Dr. D. James Kennedy's organization in Florida and Dr. Dobson's group have also one of his organizations have also been labeled as a hate group. Vanco has elected to discontinue our processing relationship with the Ruth Institute. The organization has been flagged by Cart Brands as being affiliated with product or service that promotes hate, violence, harassment, and or abuse. Merchants that display such attributes are against Vanco and Wells Fargo processing policies. The Ruth Institute is a nonprofit group that seeks to create, quote, a mass social movement to end family breakdown by energizing the survivors of the sexual revolution, paying special attention to the needs and rights of children. No reply from Wells Fargo. From a journalist at LifeSite News.com. Jennifer Roback Morse is the founder of Ruth. She says, our primary focus is family breakdown and its impact on children, understanding it, healing it, ending it. If this makes us a hate group, so be it. There has been, of course, a hate map been put out by the Southern Poverty Law Center, a very rich money-raising, donation-raising organization that is used as a serious objective source by the Associated Press, the New York Times, and the mainstream media in Chattanooga and beyond. There's a story that I want to mention about out of Nashville. The story is that Amazon may be seeking a second headquarters in the South. Now, this would bring about 50,000 jobs. And Megan Barry and the Chamber of Commerce in Nashville is trying to trying to convince this very large corporation that Nashville would be a good place. But there are a couple of hitches by the accounts of some. There's not enough mass transit in Nashville, and there are questions about its workforce. There's a site selector out of Memphis, Mike Mullis, who says the business environment in Nashville is very strong. Tennessee is a positive with no personal income tax. Overall, a very reasonable cost of living, but it gets down to workforce and the ability to move that many people by rapid transit. And caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on the air. What's on your mind?
David, I hate to interfere with your thought patterns. I know you have a lot to talk about, but you bring up such interesting topics that I have to weigh in. And
thank you.
And I just want to say, I don't know if you heard the news, but Bernie Sanders said, Hillary, let's move forward and continue with our progressive agenda, the words he used. They have an agenda, and please, this is we're not doing this for controversy. A Democrat in your family, or a socialist or liberal Republican, is more dangerous than ISIS, communist China. They are more dangerous than so-called illegal aliens coming over. They are more of a threat to our constitutional republic than any so-called invaders. I'd much rather put the money into conservatism and understanding the Christian viewpoint of loving everyone, not murdering them in the womb. And liberal Democrats in particular are far more dangerous to our republic because they're communists. And people, please look at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They're anti-family. The Southern Poverty Law Center are a bunch of cretins. They're progressive cretins. Your wife, husband, co-worker, or family member may be one of these people. Look at them and say, you are more dangerous to me in this country than ISIS, and rebuke them. Thank you, David.
Well, Mike, I think the idea of rebuking people is important sometimes, but my own method here, even as I'm trying to give a news roundup and just hit the headlines, even in doing that, my goal is to convince people by having them call me, by being reasonable, and I propose really a kind of a grace theory. And I remember once I was trying to apply for another job at the Times Free Press where I was working. I was having a very difficult time in the newsroom, and I had an interview with the man who's head of circulation. I thought, well, maybe I can learn the newspaper business, getting a job in circulation. And he asked a question, which is a very modern type of question: how do you want to be managed? And it's like asking, how do you want to be policed, right? And my answer was a shame to the idea of a corporation. I said, well, I'd like to be managed with grace. Matt Saladay, the personnel director, later told me that. Why would you say something like that? That just he didn't know what to make of that. That just made you seem like a real strange person. Indeed, I am. I guess since I offer the Minority Report on many points, I am a strange person. But I would want to be managed with grace, and grace is how we want to be received. Grace is how we want to be treated. And I think in our theory here on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio, grace is the theory we would want to stand on. And so, Mike, I'm not sure that I would want to abuse people for being Democrats. I would want to empathize with them. I would want them to think that maybe I'm a Democrat too, only I have a better idea. So that's why you, my listener, if you think about it, what you need to try to do is become a classical liberal, to think sort of as I do about the marketplace first. In other words, a classical liberal is not a Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal. He believes in the marketplace, and what he believes is a decentralized order, a social order, a decentralized economic order, where private players and individuals and families and small businesses can prosper together with less and less compulsion coming in. Now and the reason I can believe in that, and the reason I argue for that is desirable, is I believe in God's promises, right? That is to say, I hold the minority view in religion as well, and the minority view today is called postmillennialism, and that is essentially a very optimistic view about the work of God's grace and the work of the church in society through time, and so that at the end there will be great promise, great grace all around. Less of the state, less compulsion, less coercion, less war, less harassment, less policing, less violence, less statutory law, etc. Right? That's the view that the reformers had. That's the view that's been part of Christendom from the beginning. Now it's the minority view, and we have a contrary Baptistic theory held by the Church of God, held by the Baptist Church, and probably most Christians, and that is a very bleak negative view. There is no social theory in the Bible. We are simply waiting for Christ's return. There's nothing we can do by way of repair, reconstruction, rebuilding, reanimating broken systems, broken cultures, broken families. That's not possible. We just have to wait for Christ to come back and for the rapture, right? That's what everybody's waiting for, the rapture. And when you hear people say, I'm suspecting Christ's imminent return, what they're saying is we're not going to do anything to fix anything that's broken. We're not going to make any reforms. We're not going to demand grace in this system or that system. We're just going to wait for Christ's return. That's a hopeless perspective that most Christians in Chattanooga follow. Okay, that's why I'm in the minority report on that side. So, Mike, what I want you to think about is don't excoriate people for being Democrats. You should empathize with them and make them think you're one too. But you've got a better plan. Maybe we as Democrats shouldn't rely so much on laws like Republicans do, right? Maybe we as Democrats shouldn't rely so much on coercion, bringing favor to big business, right? Bringing favor to international corporations. Maybe we should have a society where there's less laws written. Why don't we stop writing laws and start erasing laws? How about that? Right? That's a perspective. And I know it's naive, but you see, I'm thinking in the long term. I'm thinking in the long term. And caller, you're live on the air. David Tulis, what's on your mind?
I just heard you talking about the SPLC. They're a joke, man. They listed a cartoon green frog as a hate symbol. I mean, come on. You can't take these guys seriously in the 21st century. They're a joke. They're useless.
All right, thanks. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And if you just give me a chance, I'm going to get through my stack. My stack is big today, and we've got some important things to get to. And the main thing I want you, I know you're busy, you're in and out here on the radio, but we've got an expert coming in. We've got a man named Clay Posey. He loves small business. He is a small business lover, and we're going to hear. He's got ideas for you. Why you, my listener, should be part of the solution. The coming disaster in America, the coming disaster in the equities, in the credit markets, is going to affect everybody. And I'm predicting we'll cut everybody's net worth by at least half. What can you do in light of these prospects, which are inevitable and are certain? And they're certain because they're promised. They're part of the promise that these wrecked systems will be seen to be wrecks. Okay, they will be seen to be wrecks. Now back to Amazon. There's a second headquarters considered in the Nashville area, 50,000 jobs. That's about a third of the population of Chattanooga. Okay, if Nashville gains that, that would certainly be remarkable. I wonder if the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce, the Chattanooga Hamilton County Chamber of Commerce Foundation, is working for that. Megan Barry, the mayor, says her economic development team is working with the chamber there to try to identify Davidson County locations. I'm confident that our socially progressive, of course, she is socially progressive, pro-business climate, talented workforce, and overall great quality of life offers, she says, the type of environment that they are looking for in the city, they'll choose. Mass transit is a pressing demand by Amazon. So the headquarters would add jobs. These are 100,000 a year, 100,000 paper dollar a year jobs. Okay. Now, also, Chattanooga.com has another non-byline story. John Wilson, I think you need to put bylines on your stories. I'd like to know whether you wrote it or whether one of your fine staff writers or freelancers wrote the stories. But it's about the tax funds, where the cash into the void tax increase will be going. It's not. The story suggests it's not so much a tax increase that will be spent into oblivion, right? It's not so much that, but I was just thinking of, when I mentioned that, I was just thinking of a phrase from Dr. Van. Well, anyway, I'll just pass on that. Brian Johnson, the superintendent, says he, in this Chattanooga.com story, he agrees with Jim Coppinger that there are some needs, right? When news stories I think even the Chattanooga Times referred to the tax increase as meeting needs. Tax increases never meet needs, right? They always meet demands. These are demands they're not needs. The demands pretend that they're needs, and indeed they may be in the narrow context of a particular roof needing repair, a particular sagging wall in a first grade classroom with a crack running down toward the radiator. That may be a need in that sense, but the larger context of you, the taxpayer, versus the county, these are not needs. These are just demands. Mayor Coppinger, yes, the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. You may interrupt me. You, my listener, have permission. Okay. You may interrupt me. David Tulis. It is Friday, after all. Do interrupt me. That's fine. If I don't get to my stack, that's okay. I know you have something worthwhile to say or to ask. Jim Coppinger is quoted as saying a significant amount of the additional revenues will be used toward building, okay, number one or two new schools. All right, that's one. Two is expanding capacity at schools in high growth areas, Ottawa area. That's two. Three, addressing some of the most pressing capital needs at several schools with either new roofs or roofing repairs. That would be four. Energy efficient windows. Five. Renovation of athletic tracks. That's six. And so there's at least six things that the money is going toward. We had suggested yesterday here on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, of course, and live on your smartphone through the TuneIn Radio app. We had suggested yesterday that this money was cash into the void, and there was something in TV9's report about that did suggest that there was no clear plan, and that's what Tim Boyd says. The only no vote, Dr. No, right? He's picking up the title here in the Chattanooga area that Representative Ron Paul of Texas had in the federal legislature. Dr. No, he would say no because one bill after the next was unconstitutional and unlawful. And here, though, Tim Boyd, the watchdog, he is really the fiscally conservative watchdog on the county commission, and the others that are there, or who are there, Randy Fairbanks and Sabrina Smedley, they are not real conservatives. Okay, they have been convinced by the needs of the machinery that it has to be fed further. It has to have a little bit more nourishment, financial nourishment. Dr. Johnson says there must be a financial investment to have a world-class system. Okay, investment and world-class. These are words which, if you put them together, you can't say no. Okay, because it is an investment, a state investment in families, as we're supposed to understand it, and that investment makes us world-class. Well, again, these are marketing terms. They're very important. They're very, very important usages. Just keep them in mind. State spending is never an investment. It's always consumption. Investment implies return to the investor. Who is the investor? Well, it's not you, okay? Even though you're paying the taxes, you're not the investor. The investor is the state. Do we want the state to have a profit? And the profit is a showing in some way of you or your children prospering to the state. That's the question. Do you want your child to continue to be prospering to the state? Or do we want to have children who are free in some way, being able to have livings independent and apart from commercial government and corporate government and the state? Now, not apart from government, but apart from the state. That's a different question entirely. And let's move on here. The stack is thick and the time is diminishing as I turn my page. Story in the Chattanooga Times Free Press this morning about Chief Roddy. There's a picture of him embracing with Franklin McCauley. Franklin McCauley is an influential relative newcomer in Chattanooga, the former racist who in his time at the university as a much younger man was convinced that blacks were being abused, and he gave up, in addition to Christianity, he gave up his identification with the South and has identified strongly in a humanitarian way with black people, and is a very good man to have in Chattanooga, though he, of course, is borrowing heavily from God's grace concept, his grace revelation and grace outpouring upon this fallen race of ours. But in the picture, Franklin Graham is embracing David Roddy, the police chief. It's occurred to me in the past couple of days of watching the news and just thinking about an encounter that my wife Jeanette had with a police officer a very favorable encounter to the department, I must say. That there might be something about Chief Roddy's past with SWAT, his military past, that seems the tough edges of that seem to be the evidences of them diminishing, right? Or if the evidences are there, they're at least not as these evidences are kind of falling in behind view of other things rising in front. And that picture, that embrace, suggests either the people like Franklin Cawley, who are very concerned about abuse of black people, that they're just being deceived and nothing's changed, or maybe the suggestion is that there may be some rapprochement between poor people and black people, the oppressed, state oppressed people, and this department. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga